everyone. So today I will be presenting to you Deciphering Transformation, a personal perspective of Mzungus in Kenya. And for the purposes of this presentation, let me first explain what a Mzungu is, or at least what I believe a Mzungu to be. In Kiswahili, Mzungu is a term used to either refer to a Westerner, be it a white American, black American, Asian American, anyone who is part of the Western culture, or sometimes it specifically means a white person. So that was something that I came to realize or struggle with this summer, whether I was a Mzungu or whether I wasn't a Mzungu. So this past summer, for 10 weeks, I was on an internship in Kenya, Africa, with a nonprofit organization. I was basically acting as a caregiver to children in various different homes, coming alongside the staff and assisting them and encouraging them in their daily chores. My presentation, my project, my thesis, what I've been working on this past year is in autoethnography. It's a newer form of research, I guess you could say, and what it is, it's basically a self-analysis. It's a reflection of my innermost thoughts, my motives, and my opinions, and who I really am as a person. And it's basically analyzing why I went to Kenya, what did I learn in Kenya, and how has it shaped me, and how have I changed. And autoethnography is an intersection of three genres: native anthropology, ethnic autobiography, autobiographic ethnography. And one of the biggest characteristics of an autoethnography is W.E.B. Du Bois' concept of double consciousness, and that as an autoethnographer, you are both conscious of yourself as the researcher and as the subject of the researcher, constantly having to be aware of both parts of you. Kind of like struggling inside of you. Yes, just that dichotomous relationship. So my presentation, my project, is actually broken down into three sections: ethnocentrism, savior complex, and consciousness. Ethnocentrism, as the New American Oxford Dictionary puts it, is evaluating other peoples and cultures according to the standards of one's own culture. I chose this picture specifically because at the first home, one of the very first assignments we were given was to assist the dorm mother, who was in charge of all of the girls at the home, with her laundry. And her laundry included scrubbing urine-soaked blankets, about 25 of them, that the girls had, I guess, urinated in while they were sleeping. And I was absolutely horrified by this. I thought it was disgusting, the most disgusting thing I've ever done. And I think this picture is symbolic about ethnocentrism because I was viewing the Kenyan way of life and their culture and how they do things through my American lenses and my American just way of evaluating things. The savior complex somewhat ties into ethnocentrism in that it's Western dominance and hierarchy in its finest form. What that means is one sees themselves as above the people they are serving, and thus tries to exercise that dominance onto the population. We try to create a hierarchy where we're always on the top, but it's us that's helping them and saving these people who are less than us. And though we don't necessarily outward admit it, that's really what our innermost intentions are and our motives are. This savior complex is a form of arrogance. We see ourselves as better than other people, other cultures, because we don't understand them, nor do we really try to understand them. In an article that I used in my thesis called Saving Malawi, there was an organization called Miracles Orphanage. And what they did is they went around to villages that they thought were starving, they were poor, and the kids were suffering. And they plucked these children out of different homes and out of different villages and brought them to this new miracle orphanage that they created. This orphanage was supposed to be so glorious and glamorous, and eventually, if you did well enough, they would send you on a trip to Disney World in Florida. And a quote from one of the graduate orphans, who is a child who was taken from his village, brought to the home, and then basically, once he graduated, he was left on his own. He said, "I have got nowhere to go, because since I have not yet secured a job, and if they happen to sack me out of this orphanage, it means I won't be able to support myself if these people finally say bye, because there's no way they can take me back to my original family." So this just indicates how sometimes we interfere with others, with the situations of others, without fully understanding the implications of those interferences. Also, the United States is often referred to as the world police. Because we stick our nose in everyone's business, and we try to tell people how to live their lives, how to run their countries, instead of letting nations be sovereign. And that's essentially what the savior complex is. We are sticking our nose in everyone's business, trying to save people because we don't understand them as being on the same level of humanity as us. I think this picture is a picture I took. I think it's very symbolic, because this is often how we see people of third world countries. We see these little black African children trapped behind the bars, trying to get into this glorious lifestyle that we live. Not really understanding that these are probably some of the happiest kids I've ever met in my life. And they have far more joy, fun, love in their hearts than I've ever seen in an American child.
Going to Kenya meant that I would be able to eat foreign, weird foods, participate in their religious ceremonies, and clothe myself in their traditional garments. I understood the population I would be serving as poor, orphaned, either infected with or affected by HIV/AIDS, and forgotten. I understood myself as a privileged, educated, and slightly rich American. Though I outwardly claimed to maintain this perspective, subconsciously I did not view the children and myself as being on the same level in regards to humanity. Henri Nouwen would describe me as having a false compassion, a mere individual reaching out from on high to those below who failed to make it in the upward pull.
And that's actually a quote from the thesis that I just spent all night writing. Yes, and that leads me into my next slide, which is false compassion. It's actually a term that I've never heard used before, deeming it a term, I guess. And to me, what it means is it's just a cover-up for appearing as compassionate. It often stems out of rich guilt. We feel bad because we have more, so we're more likely to give something or try to do something that makes it seem as though we care, and it makes it seem as though we're making a difference, when really it's only to assuage our own guilt. And through this, you avoid the root of the issue, which is, why are there so many disparities and inequalities in the world, and why are we the ones that are on top and benefiting from the circumstances of all these people who are suffering? And it's sympathy versus empathy. Sympathy being you feel sorry for someone, seeing their situation, you feel bad for them. Empathy being you feel what they feel. Empathy leads you into social justice, whereas sympathy leads you into just guilt and charity. It's also a perpetuation of stereotypes. We perpetuate the stereotypes that these little poor kids and these poor people need our help. They're always going to be poor. It's our responsibility to save them, savior complex, and give to them. I use Paul Farmer's pathologies of power throughout my thesis, and his concept of charity versus development versus social justice. And he describes charity as basically a way to make one sleep better at night. You give because you feel bad, because you see a problem, and you feel kind of compelled to give, but that's the extent of it. You don't really investigate more, you don't try to get to understand the issue, and you definitely don't try to make change happen on a more macro scale. Development, that's basically saying that we need to develop these people because their lifestyle isn't right. Why is their lifestyle not right? Because it's not the same as ours. Social justice is what Paul Farmer says is the best form of action, to take social action when confronted with a social problem, and that involves empathy, where you feel for the people that are suffering and you realize that it's not because you worked harder that you are in your position. It is because by mere chance and because of the inequalities that we perpetuate as Americans, as privileged Americans, and choose to ignore. This is an example of exactly what I'm talking about.
Where one day is the same as the next. A day with no school, no doctor, not much hope. But who cares? He's not your child. Why should you care? Because he is a child and he needs you. When you call Christian Children's Fund, you'll know he has a school to go to. You'll know he'll have a doctor to see, so he won't die like thousands of children did last night. Not your child? Once you start getting to know each other, that'll change. All you have to do is step up and say, I'm going to help this child. Because you can, and because he needs you. Do something wonderful. Call and ask us to send you a picture of a child who needs you.
Now, if that video doesn't have savior complex written all over it, then I don't know what does. And what I'm sure many of us have seen these commercials late at night and felt bad and said, oh, maybe I should donate something. And that's exactly what the purpose is, to get you to feel bad and spend $5 or $10 a month so that you can sleep better at night. When in actuality, this is a very corrupt organization, so my research has shown me. So really, you're making yourself feel better without really doing anything. And I decided that that isn't the way that I want to be. I'm a sociologist. I'm not supposed to be ethnocentric. I'm not supposed to have a savior complex. I'm supposed to be conscious and know what's going on in the world. But it's a process for everybody. And I was on a journey of my own. I don't know if you noticed, but that's me in the middle. And that is like one of the earlier leap of faith that I took during the summer, when I said, I'm going to step out of my comfort zone and I'm going to embrace the culture I'm in, and I'm going to learn from these people more than I'm going to teach them. And I realized I am a Mzungus. Another large part of my thesis is double consciousness. And W.E.B. Du Bois said, one ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body, whose dog strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder. And essentially, what he was saying is that as an African American, he is constantly at war with himself about his own identity. Are you an American or are you a Negro? Are you a black person, as we would say today? And the kind of the conflict that causes within oneself, trying to find your identity, find your roots, find your place in this world, and just how difficult that is for an African American as compared to a white American who doesn't really have to necessarily think about the same things that African Americans do. And in Kenya, I realized that I was experiencing what I termed triple consciousness. I was black in Africa, an American in Africa, and also a black American in Africa as compared to white people in Africa. They don't really distinguish, when it comes to Mzungu as a Westerner, as a white person, they don't really distinguish between American, Canadian, all of that. But when you're black in Kenya, they will tack on the you're a black American, you're not an African. Like you may be black, you may have the same skin, but you aren't the same. And it was such a struggle for me, and it actually caused me to fall into a bit of an identity crisis because I couldn't figure out where do I belong.